Hi students. I want to talk to you a little bit about absolute value. I know that you did the Explore Activity 1, page 19 and 20. So I want to just kind of talk about it, make sure you understand it, and then I'll correct it with you. So first of all, absolute value. It's the distance from zero. And because we're talking distance, we cannot go negative. And I know what you want to say, well, can't you walk backwards? It doesn't work like that. Think about a car. If you were driving backwards, would you reduce the mileage on your car? No. If we could, we'd all drive backwards till it was at zero and sell our car for more money, but we can't. So even if we're walking backwards, we're still going a positive distance. And so that's why with absolute value, even though we're talking about distance, a lot of people kind of think of it like just make everything positive. It's not what absolute value is, but it helps us get to the answer. Okay? And then you got to remember that not all absolute values are positive. Think about which example is not positive or negative. Zero. The absolute value is zero because the space from zero is zero. So that makes sense. So just so you know, an absolute value is always non-negative. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. I know there was a video from Khan Academy that you watched. I do want to say, just remember when they're using X, X is just a number we don't know. It's the number that we're finding. It's the answer to the problem. And instead of just leaving something blank, like saying this, we can put the X in the middle and talk about the absolute value of X. And then when they want us to find a specific absolute value, they might tell you, what if X was -3? And we take that -3 and we put it right there. And then the absolute value of -3 is +3. And this X really just serves as a placeholder so that we can talk about it. Okay, so I don't want you to be confused from the Khan Academy video. All right, so let's grade your work. So page 19, letter A, the absolute value of -7 is +7. If you want for a while to put like a +7, just to remind yourself we're really talking about a +7, you can. But please remember, without the plus sign, the default is that it's positive. Okay? Letter B, the absolute value of 5 is still 5. We're not working opposites. We're not saying -5. All your absolute values are going to be positive numbers or that one example of 0. Letter C, the absolute value of 7 is 7. Letter D, the absolute value of -2 is +2. Letter E, the absolute value of 4 is 4. And letter F, the absolute value of -4 is also +4. Okay, so you were supposed to do some reflection. So number 1, it says, which pairs of numbers have the same absolute value? How are these numbers related? Okay, so -7 and 7 have the same absolute value. -4 and 4 have the same absolute value. So you should have picked something like that, maybe 3 and -3, 2 and -2. And all those examples, what do we call that? It starts with the O, opposites. Okay, so when we learn about opposites, we're really also learning about absolute value and vice versa. Okay, so give yourself a point on this assignment, or on this question, I'm sorry, for getting the number part right, and then give yourself another point for having opposites. And if you don't have one of those things, just add it to your paper and I'll see that you were paying attention and grading yourself. Okay, number 2. So we're going to justify some reasoning. So it says negative numbers are less than positive numbers. Does this mean that absolute value of a negative number must be less than the absolute value of a positive number? And we're supposed to explain that. The answer is no. Okay, because let me show you. Let me grab an eraser real quick. So let me show you. If I had -7, that is smaller than 3. I would rather have $3 than have lost $7. Okay, but watch, as soon as we put them both into absolute value. Oops, sorry. What's the absolute value of -7? +7. And the absolute value of 3 is still 3. And now 7's bigger. Remember, we're opening to the bigger side. So that is a perfect example, and hopefully you have an example, something like that, where as soon as we make everything absolute value, these really small numbers become much bigger. Okay, let's move on to page 20. So on page 20, we're really looking at real world situations. So after you go through the example and you look at everything, I want to remind you, okay, so if you need to, pause the video and make sure you reread page 20. But I want to remind you that there are times that we want to work in absolute value. So for instance, if you owe me money and I'm putting that on I'm putting that on a form and I'm saying, you know what, I'm going to keep track of what you owe me. Maybe you borrow a lot of money from me. I don't know. So I keep that on a form. I could say, you borrowed, that's what the negative means, 10. You borrowed 3. But when you're talking to someone, you're not going to say you borrowed negative 10. That doesn't make sense. So we say you borrowed $10. We use the absolute value to make sense out of what we're saying, because you borrowed $10. That negative and that word borrow mean the same thing. So if I say borrowed 10, I don't need to say negative 10. And here's a perfect example where we're going to use the absolute value in our everyday conversation. Okay? So on number 3, it says, must the absolute value of a number always be positive? No. And I already gave this one away. Okay, so what is our one example? Hopefully now you get it and you wrote it down. Yes, 0. Okay, because 0 is not positive, it's not negative, but it's still an absolute value. Okay, hopefully you did good on that. If you have any questions, email me right now. I want you on the bottom of your paper to add some you try questions. So you should have taken a couple notes. If you didn't, go back and take some notes. And then I want you to add some you try problems, okay? So I want you to, just like we were talking right now, so you can just call this letter A. If I am talking about temperature, and I am saying that the temperature was negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit, I want you to write a statement in words that you would actually say if you were talking about negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? The next one I want you to do, and you can pause at any point, is find the absolute value of negative 12. Find the absolute value of 0. Oops, that was not supposed to be a parentheses. Let's fix that. Sorry about that. And letter D, why don't you find the absolute value of negative 55? Let's do one more. Let's do letter E and find the absolute value of a 1. I'll do that in case it isn't clear. Okay, so pause the video, try these problems, and then go ahead and turn the video back on when you've tried them. Okay, so something that you could say instead of saying the temperature was negative 13, you could have said the temperature reached 13 degrees Fahrenheit below 0. Okay, so we could have, let me grab a different color. We could have, for this one, said 13 degrees below 0. Notice, as soon as we leave off the negative, we replace it with another word that means negative. So before it was, you owe me $10, and the O part was the negative. And then once we said the O part, you owe me, I don't have to say negative 10 anymore. So same with this one. Because I'm taking the negative off, I have to say the word below to still mean the same value. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. The absolute value of negative 12 is 12. The absolute value of 0 is 0. The absolute value of negative 55 is 55. And the absolute value of 1 is still 1. Make sure you didn't make it a negative. Remember, our absolute values are all positive numbers or 0. That's our only one example. They're never negative numbers. Okay, if you have any questions, please email me right away. And hopefully you're doing great and you got 100% on that. All right, see you soon.